We are Chris Lee and Blake Lovell. We work at southeastern14.com. We're here to talk some SEC basketball and baseball today. Blake, let's start with basketball. The landscape changes every day. So if you went to sleep last night and haven't checked the news, there's usually a decent chance something has happened. So what's gone on of note since we last talked, or any other topics that have come up that are worth discussing?
Yeah, aside from the dogs barking, not a whole
Has,
lot, I
has your dog
guess.
hit the portal?
Yeah, it's been that way thus far. A lot of communication apparently on the dog front this morning. So, um, I mean, it's the usual transfers. There's several guys I think we haven't talked about yet. We mentioned Noah Carter, Missouri was probably going to happen. He had visited there and he did commit, so that gives them a guy from Northern Iowa that was a pretty good player, and I think he'll help them out offensively for sure. Because he's just a really good player. So I think that's a nice fit for Missouri. Picking up another guy, they're just basically retooling the entire roster. Outside of a couple guys, so that's a nice pickup for Dennis Gates. We had mentioned that one that Carter had visited there on the previous video. And others, Florida, I guess, had an exit and a join, a guy joining the program. That's Alex Fudge from LSU.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't play a whole lot last year, but we always say it's one of those situations where I think you never know kind of how it's going to unfold when you go to a different place. And again, he's an SEC player that I've got to look up his minutes, but he played about 14, 15 minutes a game. Yeah, I mean, he didn't play a ton, but I think that's kind of one of those things where opportunity wasn't always there, just based on that entire roster, as we know. So, um, I think that's one that Florida gains. Now they lose Kawasi Reeves, who I think he's a really good player. So I think that's one that. But I mean, again, we've seen this before, right? Where guys will go into the transfer portal, maybe they decide to come back. Um, it's just I think it's everyone's just seeing what's out there. That's how this thing works now. So they lose him. We talked about Castleton, and kind of. I think Florida's going to be okay. I think again, they're Fudge. I think will be able to have more opportunity to play more minutes there, and um, so I think Florida's definitely a team over the past week or so that we've talked a lot about, just because Castleton coming back, and so that's one I think worth noting. Jarkel Joyner leaving Ole Miss. I mean, again,
That's a big
you
loss.
never. Yeah. I mean, I think so, and I don't mean that in terms of his ability to play. I just think it's for Ole Miss to me. Yeah, it's not that he's not a good player, because we saw what he could do scoring wise, but I think Ole Miss is just kind of. I think they're trying some different things, and I think they kind of saw last year. I mean, I know the injuries were a big part of it, but I think they've just got to they've got to overhaul a lot of things there, and I think that's kind of where they are right now. It's just how do you rebuild some things, and I wonder kind of what that roster is going to look like and how they approach it this year, next year, whatever. Um, because I just think there were some things that I mean they tried that route. Now they've lost some, as we said. I mean, talk about him and Austin Crowley and those guys, have all transferred. But I think they're kind of just trying to do something different with the roster, and I don't know exactly what that looks like next season, because as of right now, I mean, it's hard to really judge a whole lot on Ole Miss because you don't really know who's going to be on the team. But yes, from a scoring standpoint, there's no doubt. I just think I don't know, like I feel like they're just trying to do something completely different now with the roster, because it didn't work out last year, even beyond the injuries. Like it just didn't things didn't come together. So those are the main ones. Kario Oquendo back at Georgia.
What?
Um, so that's one that I think, like we say, I mean, when guys go into the transfer portal, it's really just a feeling out period of, having going in there, seeing what's available. Is it going to be better than what you think you're going to have at your previous school? And it's like I said, so you can never kind of count those things out. And we've seen this happen before, where guys go in the transfer portal, guys decommit, you have a coaching change, and then all of a sudden they just kind of realize, hey, this is probably still the best fit for me, and I can make it work here. So that's a huge win for Mike White, who I said I think is going to have a chance to turn things around. I don't want to say quickly, but I think he'll get them back to a respectable spot in the SEC in the next couple of years, and that's a big win for him to get one of the what I still think is one of the better players in the league. He just played on the worst team, so
Yeah, I had not seen that yet, so that's a massive win for them.
yeah. Because I mean they've had a lot of guys transfer, but again, it's a 6-win team, so if you have guys transfer out, it's not always the worst thing because you are trying to kind of do things a little bit differently now, and I think that's the case. Like I said, with even teams like Ole Miss who are just trying to figure out the best way forward for the roster, and and again, like I said, it's not that when these players transfer out, yes, some of them are you're just thinking, wow, where do we kind of go from here? But I think in some cases, if you are a coaching staff, it gives you an opportunity to kind of rethink, all right, these guys are transferring. We know things are really not going to look anything like they did last year. What is our best path forward? How do we rebuild things to compete in the SEC? And I think that's where a lot of these teams are at now, especially the ones with coaching changes, but not just them. Whether it's Ole Miss or some of the others that are really trying to figure out, okay, how do we get from being in that bottom tier and kind of moving forward? And that's where transfers are just everything. And so I would expect a team like Ole Miss to get in on some more of these transfers. And yeah, it's just going to be still, like I said, we don't have a great feel for what the roster is going to look like for a lot of teams. And now I think you can throw teams like Ole Miss in there. Still even teams like Georgia, we have to see how things fill out on the roster. So yeah, long way to go. I think I'm trying to think of who else maybe that has had some additions since we last talked, but I think we've hit on pretty much most of them. J.D. Davison leaving Alabama, NBA draft. I don't know about that one. I think it's you never know, right? I mean, you just
I
never
think that's
know.
premature. Yeah.
I just think it's yeah. I mean, he's not. He made it clear he's not coming back. So, um, I don't think he's a top pick by any means. I just think that he's still got some things he has to work on to be successful at the NBA level. I think they were showing yesterday the mock drafts. He's in the 30s to 40s, somewhere in there. Um, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, again, there's nothing to. You're never gonna hate on a kid for trying to pursue a dream of getting paid, millions of dollars to play in the NBA. So it'd be interesting, if he goes the G League route or something like that. But I mean, he'll be drafted. I think that's something at least you go for. So he'll be drafted somewhere in the second round. So that's just a matter of seeing if you catch on. We always say around about the second round picks and such. So I think though Alabama, we talked about before, they're pretty well equipped to be fine with the recruiting class they've got coming in, and they'll have some more additions. But I think Alabama's going to be fine. So
Yeah, that's a pure upside play for the NBA. And my apologies for the Oreo outburst earlier. I didn't discover the mute button fast enough there. But
yeah,
what else have we got on the horizon? I know Scottie Pippen Jr. still hasn't made a decision one way or the other about going pro. I know Brandon Huntley Hatfield was out there last time we talked in the portal, but hadn't landed. Anything on the horizon concerning comings and goings in the SEC?
no, I think it's just waiting to see who goes where. Like I said, I expect still a team like Missouri to pick up one or two more. They may still have exits as well. Again, it's still early in this process. We're still only second week of April, and I think you're still going to have guys leave. So it's easy for us to say, all right, feel like things are taking shape for certain rosters, but you're still going to have guys that are going to leave at this point. Um, so I think it's just yeah, you're just waiting to kind of see how everything kind of unfolds. I think from there, LSU, we talked about lost a lot of players. Andy Kennedy at UAB, he's done a good job over the years of recent years since he's been at UAB of picking up former SEC players and kind of building them on his roster, and Eric Gaines, who was at LSU, winds up at UAB. So that's another one. I mean, I know it's non-SEC related now that he's playing at UAB, but Andy Kennedy is going back to the SEC roots to pick up some of these guys. And that's had a lot. I mean, that's been successful for him so far. So no, I think now it's the draft process. It's more transfers. You wait and see who stays in the draft, who pulls out of the draft. That process is getting going. So, yeah, it's just still way too early.
We have baseball starting tonight in the SEC.
Yep. Several.
5 series. I'll be honest. I meant for us to talk more baseball to this point than we have. We've both been busy with our own things. And frankly, I've had a devil of a time getting a grasp on this league. Like, this is the most unpredictable I ever remember. The SEC, the offensive numbers have been crazy. You're seeing stuff like Alabama sweeping Ole Miss and Oxford, which I never would have thought was coming. You've got Tennessee running away with it, and then I think 2 through 14, you almost don't know what's going to happen. Literally, any team can beat anybody any given week. I mean, I know you don't follow baseball as much as you do basketball, but you follow it. Do you ever remember a year like that where just going into a weekend, it's kind of like, all right, this is a coin flip, and I'll just go with the home team to win 2 out of 3, for lack of a better idea, because that's about where I am with this league right now, which, by the way, I'm not saying that's bad. To me, it actually makes it more fun than knowing one team's coming in to get steamrolled by another team, which we have seen a lot, especially as it gets later. But I don't remember a year like this in the SEC in a while.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like you said, I think the teams you expected to kind of have a stronger grip on the league, whether that's Vanderbilt or, I mean, what Ole Miss is, what are they, 4-8 now, making conference play. So, and then you've had those teams like Auburn and Alabama and, teams like that, obviously what Tennessee's doing. So, yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting to see it all play out. And like you said, I think we talked about Auburn going to that Vanderbilt series. We were like, look, this is one where you think Vanderbilt should get on track, but yeah, I mean, it's just you see what Auburn's done, and it's been the case. Like, take that series and apply it to 2 other teams where you've got a team that goes on the road, and you're thinking, all right, they're in pretty good shape here, but then you have a team that just comes out and plays really well, or flip it, to where you just have a team that just plays so well. And I think a team like Alabama, they've obviously got a big series this weekend at Tennessee, but yeah, I mean, even a team like that, right? It's just, it's wild to kind of see some of these other teams that maybe you didn't really expect to play as well as they have. But yeah, I mean, you look at teams like Alabama and Auburn, and again, that's not taking anything away from the teams who are dominating, but it's just, you have some of these teams that are kind of in the middle that have looked really good at times, and that's made it a bit of a challenge for some of the other teams. Although, like we said, you still got Tennessee and Arkansas to an extent that are still doing their thing, at the top of their respective division, I guess. But yeah, it's wild. Some of these games or some of these series have been really wild to this point.
Yeah, it's not even the teams in the middle. It's the teams at the bottom that make it interesting too. We've seen it with South Carolina at times. We've seen it with Kentucky. Alabama I had pegged as a bottom team earlier. Alabama's in the top 25 in some rankings this week. Vanderbilt's dropped out. Ole Miss, I think, is barely hanging on. I mean, just things I never would have expected. There's a lot of season to play, but I think the big series this weekend, there's really 2 of them. I think Vandy, Florida is interesting because Florida just got some momentum last weekend after snapping a losing streak. Vandy's where Florida was a week ago, where the season is getting perilous in terms of where it is in the conference and win-loss record. Those 2 teams hate each other generally. Kevin O'Sullivan has generally gotten the better of Tim Corbin. Whether that's Nashville or Gainesville, it hasn't seemed to matter for the most part. So that one's an interesting one because I think the team that wins that feels really good coming out of it. The team that loses it is probably concerned. But I think the big one, LSU and Arkansas. right now in power rankings, it's Tennessee and then, a big drop to whoever's 2. Right now, I think Arkansas is 2 despite losing the series last weekend. But I think LSU was really right on its heels. And that one's in Fayetteville. Arkansas has a really favorable schedule this year. And I don't say that to knock the Hogs. That's how it turned out. That's always how it happens every year, where it seems like Arkansas got the tough teams on its schedule at home and the easier ones away. I don't like Arkansas to lose back-to-back weekends at Baum. But that one's fascinating because LSU's pitching, I think, I don't know how many people realize that their pitching has been a lot better than we expected. We know the bats are there. I think LSU is like a really safe bet right now. I think you got 3 teams that I think are, barring something crazy, safe bets to host. Just based on what they've done and the way I feel about what they've got, I think that's Tennessee, Arkansas, and LSU. And I think Arkansas, LSU, I would have liked to see that a little bit more in Baton Rouge. But I don't know. Maybe it doesn't make a difference the way the Tigers have played and pitched.
Yeah, it's that's I mean, when you look at the schedule, I mean, that's definitely one, like you said. I think that it's just very interesting because of I think it's the LSU part of it. Like you said, you kind of look at what LSU's done, and I know what was that? I feel like it was that 2 weeks ago? We were talking about Auburn going in, and we're just like, man, look at what Auburn's done here against LSU, and
2 out of 3 in Baton Rouge, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think, but for them to kind of respond with the sweep of Mississippi State, and yeah, so now you're back on the road, but you still have a little bit of momentum there coming off of that now, and bigger challenge certainly at Arkansas, but this is an interesting weekend slate. I think when you look at it, there's a lot of interesting possibilities. I think with some of these series, like I said, I mean, even Alabama and Tennessee. I mean, I know a lot of people had some fun with Tennessee. Well, non-Tennessee fans had fun with them losing that game to Tennessee Tech in the midweek, but I just don't really. I think you're still looking at the team that's just dominated this league to this point. So, so that's an interesting one just because of how Alabama's been playing, but I still think you're going to be picking Tennessee probably in that one. So yeah, some pretty interesting matchups for sure.
I think Alabama can get a game there, though, the way it's playing, the way it's pitching. Tennessee's offense has not been the same the last couple of weeks. It's still been good. And, of course, that game in midweek, they played that in a minor league park with bigger dimensions, and both teams played with wood bats, which I thought was interesting. Tennessee got 4 hit in that one. All were singles. I don't know how much that carries forward. I think, and people wouldn't really think this, I think Kentucky, Missouri is really interesting because Kentucky, not good in the RPI 78, but if that RPI inches up, it's got some good series wins. It's taken one from TCU. It's taken one from Georgia. Missouri, you wouldn't think it unless you're looking. Missouri 27 in the RPI. Missouri's not a team that would go to the NCAAs today, but it's better than people think. If Missouri can, 3-9 at this point, that's a lot to bite off. But say Missouri gets a sweep, that's at home. Missouri gets really interesting to look at, but based on the numbers, the computer numbers. And by the way, the non-RPI computers think Missouri's a pretty good team too, which is interesting. Not a great team, but maybe I don't know. If you add an NIT for baseball, that caliber team, actually they have them as top 40 for the most part, which is interesting. So that one's going to be fun to watch. Ole Miss desperately needs a series win. They're getting South Carolina at home, where Carolina's beaten Vandy in Texas. And then you got Georgia, looks like without Jonathan Cannon for the weekend. It gets an A&M team that's been a real wild card. Winning a series at LSU, I think losing the next 2, and then getting one against Kentucky. That one's interesting. Like I said, every series in this league is interesting every weekend anymore. So those are the 5 that start tonight. Then we've got Vandy, Florida starting tomorrow. And who are we leaving out? I don't have it in front of me. Mississippi State's another one. That starts tonight. If Auburn can get 2 at State, Auburn's in tremendous position. Not just to get to the tournament, to get to Hoover, but also maybe to host. That RPI, I think, is 21, so it's getting in that territory. State's RPI is 79, so I don't know how much that boosts you, but certainly, if nothing else, it's loss avoidance. I think State's better than that, but we've talked about them before. Yeah, I mean, I see. I think every series in this league is impactful. Georgia without Cannon, I think Georgia's been living off a little bit of voodoo. Outside of Cannon, the pitching's not been as good as I thought. That one in College Station. I mean, just, again, everything worth watching here, and we're missing, let's see.
Tennessee and Alabama starts tomorrow.
Tennessee, Alabama's tomorrow. Vandy and Georgia, Vandy and Florida starts tomorrow. So, Again, reasons to watch every single series this weekend. There really are.
Yep, have it all covered. Southeastern14.com.
All right. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button. We'll see you again soon.